I'm going to basically go ahead and switch over to talking about this group and, just kind of how to find us. So basically, a lot of people find us through meetup.com, and I'm going to share my screen real quick so you can see that. So I'll go ahead and share my desktop. And let's go ahead and pull this together. Let's see here. So some of you find us through meetup.com, and there are meetups there where you can see like latest JavaScript meetings. We have this one today, building a Facebook AI hackathon. And this one was interesting because I talked to Kartik a while back ago, and he was demoing some code that he wrote for a hackathon at Facebook or using a Facebook AI, and I thought this was really cool, and so I wanted him to come give the talk, and so he agreed to do that, and we finally were able to get a date for this month. So I'm really excited for it. I think it's really interesting how he basically put together this, and I think AI is something that is becoming more and more prevalent, especially with the way the industry and building code is going. So it's always fun to just kind of see how very intelligent people out there like put together something and try kind of learning some of those best practices, especially for your own code. So great profile here. If you're interested in these kind of meetups, I would say like the main thing to do is if you're on meetup.com, you could follow us here. It's just meetup.com/JavaScriptLA. And you don't have to live in Los Angeles. You can also visit our meetups from around the world using Zoom. And I think that's a great thing because nowadays, basically from anywhere you can connect in, even if you were somebody who lived in LA, you can stay in touch with your friends from JavaScript LA. JavaScript LA also has a website called javascriptla.net. It's also called HackBuddy. And basically, we post all of our meetups here. And so you can go here and check out some interesting meetups coming in the next few weeks. We do have one tomorrow as well for everybody listening in. And so this will be on JavaScript promises. So you'll definitely want to go and check that out. It's with our friends from Kintone, and they do free workshops every now and then. So these are pretty long. They're longer than normal meetup, and they give you a chance to really just sort of practice like your JavaScript. So if you want to get better at that, I recommend going to the meetup tomorrow as well. There's one for Developer Week, which we're kind of working with also. This might be kind of fun if you're interested in learning the latest about what you should be up to date with in 2021. Go check that out. We have some links and discounts if you want to get them. And then you can also watch some of the older meetups on our YouTube channel. It's just youtube.com/hackbuddy. And there's an org at the end, so hackbuddyorg. And if you go here, basically you can see like all the past meetups that we've done, and just kind of get a sense of where we're going and what sort of things we'll be talking about in the future. So definitely stay in touch with us through this. The video tonight will be recorded and posted to HackBuddy on YouTube channel. So for those of you who ask, that's where you can find us. And we're also on all relevant social media. Probably the one that most developers like is Twitter. So just go to twitter.com/hackbuddyorg, and basically you can follow us here. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook. If you're interested in that, I can make sure that I send an email out to everybody. So if you want, be sure to join our mailing list. Again, that's on the main website. And lastly, there is one thing that I wanted to also talk about. I've talked about it a few times at other meetups, but I do want to just continue to keep saying it. We do have a hacking group along with our HackBuddy website where you can come and do coding with us. So you'll work on projects that we're working on. One project that we're doing in particular is using React with a library called Storybook. So it's a pretty cool chance to learn how to use React, how to work with something called Storybook, design and develop components in a modern way, and really just kind of like work with other people that you may not be able to work with anyway. Like maybe if you're a lone developer or an independent contractor, you may not have coworkers. So I always kind of felt like sometimes, I wanted to have people I could bounce ideas off or work together with. So this is an open source coding group that you can join. The link to it is just basically from here on our teamhack.org page. You can just go to the GitHub repo, and then basically you could take a look at the different projects we have and then get involved. If this is your first dive into open source, it's pretty easy to kind of learn. You just follow the project board, and then every Tuesday we have meetups for Team Hack. So you can go there and see what we're doing and join in if you feel like you want to contribute. So with that in mind, let's talk about more GitHub with Kartik and just dive into his project with Otto. So Kartik and Sanuj, I'm going to hand it over to you all.
Awesome. Thanks, VJ. All right. Let me just get screen share set up. Okay. Can everyone see the slideshow?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull up my notes. 1 second. Oops. Okay. Nothing's covering it, right?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
Looks good to me.
Awesome. So hi everyone. My name is Kartik, and I'm here with my cousin Sanuj.
Hey guys.
And today we'll be giving you a short presentation on our experience building Otto, which was a winner of Facebook's AI Hackathon last year. So just want to get this out of the way. My computer does have a Wi-Fi issue where very rarely it can like cut out for 20 seconds or so. So if that happens, I'll just reconnect quickly and we should be good to go. But yeah, so just for some quick bio info, I'm a undergrad student at UVA, currently a second year, and I'm majoring in computer science and economics. And last summer, I interned at Amazon as a software engineer intern. And I actually worked with the Alexa video team and got to work on some cool features there. And pretty interestingly, I was also involved in some natural language based work. So I got to see how some of this is used in industry. And it's pretty similar to a few of the things that Sanuj and I did in the hackathon. And then lastly, for fun, I really enjoy making playlists. So picking a theme or a topic, and then finding all the songs I can think of from different genres that meet that theme. So yeah.
Cool. Hey, I'm Sanuj. I am a software engineer at Facebook currently, based out of the Bay Area. I graduated from UMass Amherst in 2019 with an MS in computer science. And if it wasn't already obvious, I like playing guitar. So yeah. Cool. So yeah, to give you a quick overview of our presentation today, we'll be going over Otto, our hackathon project, then the ideation stage of the project, our tech stack, the development process, and finally the next steps after submitting and our takeaways from the experience. Cool. So for the past few years, big tech companies have been organizing annual hackathons revolving around hot topics in computer science. Things like augmented reality, instant messaging, and artificial intelligence, to name a few. So this past summer, we competed in Facebook's 2020 AI Hackathon. which was a month-long competition with a special focus on natural language. Specifically, competitors were asked to use Facebook's NLP platform, which is known as Wit AI, um, to build natural language interactions that drive productivity, help people learn skills, or discover new ways to connect users with existing technologies. Um, for our hackathon submission, we built Otto, which is an intelligent web application designed to help aspiring machine learning engineers go from idea to implementation with minimal domain knowledge. Our web application helps you select the different components of your machine learning software visually and then generates ready-made Python code for you. It automatically recommends components based on your goals with the help of a chatbot powered by Vid AI. Uh, with Otto, machine learning becomes an intuitive, natural language experience. At the heart of our website is a beginner-friendly design. It's made for novices as it assumes minimal familiarity with ML, and users simply describe their end goals to obtain intelligent recommendations, or they can choose from sample data sets to harness our models in an instant. Next, we offer powerful machine learning tools, including models for regression, classification, and natural language processing, as well as pre-processors tailored to the user's specific problem. Lastly, we aim to provide users with an educational experience. Um, Users are walked through each stage of the process with auto explaining terminology when needed, and annotated code blocks provide eager learners an understanding of their end-to-end pipeline. So, one of the biggest obstacles faced by those just getting started with ML is the abundance of jargon, from things like loss functions to contour boundaries, and a bunch of models to look at and experiment with. So, beginners can't be expected to decide what models to use based on cryptic terminology, let alone develop one from scratch. So, Auto helps here by narrowing down your options, by inferring the high level task at hand from a simple objective statement. This task inference is powered by a WIT client trained on 300 such statements. For example, I want to detect loan applications as fraudulent, or help me forecast stock prices, and so on. These queries are derived from real world machine learning research, and Auto attempts to categorize the task intent as regression, classification, or NLP. Um, the user's objective statement is parsed for keyword matches against our database of sample datasets. If a relevant dataset is found, Auto pulls the optimal task model and pre-processes for the dataset and pre-selects them for the user throughout the pipeline building process. Otherwise, Auto issues a task recommendation based on the recognized intent. If no intent was identified, the user is still provided with some helpful tips um, to help them pick the best task themselves. Um, so here, users in the dataset selection screen, users are recommended a specific sample dataset matching their subject, which is the information they provided to Auto, or otherwise offered to preview and choose one themselves, as you can see. Sample data allows beginners to prototype models quickly and easily without the complexity of finding a data set and figuring out the relevant features among dozens. Um, Users may also opt to work with their own data, um, which they can later include using the generated code. However, visualizations only work with the sample data sets that we provide. Uh, so the visualization stage for our models, um, this particular one is for the neural network. It activates um, when you select the neural network model, and otherwise other visualizations activate when any models are used with sample data. For the neural network, Auto pre-configures a standard model architecture with research-based activations and initializers but users are free to tinker with their model layer by layer as they wish. Additionally, Otto can also perform instant redesigns via the chat that translates user instructions into architecture changes. So, as I mentioned, when using one of our sample datasets, users can explore how parameters affect k-nearest neighbors and regression slopes. So this is regression where you can choose the column you want to use to predict the dependent variable in the dataset and then compare results from other columns. And this is KNN, K nearest neighbor, where you can set the K value, X and Y axes, and see how the model improves. The training results are also presented in the chat box on the right. Now, what good is a fancy model if it takes ages to train? In this step, Otto swoops in with hand-picked preprocessors for the user's data and model selections, abstracting away the intricacies of feature engineering and dimensionality reduction, um, which are machine learning techniques that optimize the data for efficient learning. As always, users can override the recommendations that Otto provides here. And as the final step, all done. With your data sorted out, preprocessor set and model configured, Otto gives you a nice view of your work. For convenience, we offer buttons to copy the code to your clipboard. You can deploy it to a Google Colab notebook to just carry on the process. Or you can restart this whole pipeline building mechanism and try out other things as well.
Sorry, I realized my audio was muted. All right. So we've shown you what Otto is and how it works, but how did we actually get to this point? So now we will be taking you behind the scenes of our ideation and design process for the software. So recall that the hackathon centered on natural language experiences, powered by Facebook's WIT service. But outside of that, it had a broad, really wide-ranging mandate to do anything from enhancing productivity and learning to redefining how people interact with current technologies. So we tried to come up with a solution at the intersection of all of those goals. So when first starting out, the first thing we thought about was one of my previous hackathon projects called NetWeaver, which was a website where you can build neural nets and tune hyperparameters through a visual interface, therefore automatically generating the necessary Python code for the neural net. And for anyone unfamiliar, neural networks are among the most powerful machine learning models at the basis of recent advances within AI. And their performance depends a lot on how they're designed, as they can have different shapes and components. So the idea here was to allow people to quickly and easily experiment with different neural network architectures, helping to speed up the machine learning process. So looking to incorporate WIT's natural language understanding capabilities for the purpose of the hackathon, we contemplated an extension of NetWeaver, allowing model building through simple commands, things like create a 3-layer neural network with 3 inputs. In short, a web app that listens to voice or text commands, builds a neural net, and then generates the corresponding code. Now, if this all sounds oddly specific for a hackathon submission, that's because, well, it is. We realized that this very limited niche idea wouldn't justify a month's worth of effort. And we tried thinking of ways to expand the project, like adding support vector machines and other models. But at the end of the day, our varying ideas all shared a common theme. NLP was being shoehorned into an existing project without an awareness for the user experience and desirability of the end product. We knew we were falling way short of the scope of what Facebook was asking us to do, which was to create real experiences from natural language applications and unlock brand new capabilities for people. So it was back to the drawing board for us. Forget just neural nets, or SVMs. We asked ourselves, what was the real problem we wanted to get at? You see, machine learning is a fast-growing, insanely exciting field that has drawn global attention from governments, businesses, schools, and other institutions. But it remains plagued by a few key issues. For one thing, like most sciences, it has a ton of technical jargon. Terms like multiple regression and ordinal classification help researchers think about their field and distinguish between subjects, but aren't always too useful at describing how ordinary people think about the problem they're trying to solve. People know what they want to accomplish, like detecting impurities in water or extracting names from text data, but don't know how that looks in code. And more unique to ML is an informational barrier of sorts. There's tons of rules of thumb and tips and tricks that remain scattered across research papers and web pages. It's easy for beginners to miss out on some best practice for their specific application and then wonder why they can't get it to work. So for such a promising and increasingly important field, there's just too many reasons for people to give up before they can even get involved. And so that's what we wanted to address. By recentering our vision on an actual user problem, rather than a solution in search of a problem, which is what we were first doing, we were able to conceive of a new idea, something that takes what people want to do with machine learning, and from that idea creates the full-fledged machine learning software required to do so. Now you're probably wondering, this all sounds great, but what does it actually mean? Well, that's the very position we found ourselves in last May. We had this concept in our head, but before we could work on anything, we'd have to flesh out more details about this project. So our first step was subdividing the machine learning process. We envisioned some type of web app containing separate modules to help users tackle the different aspects of their machine learning problem. So for example, a model selection panel might help them decide between neural nets or basic regressors, while data-related modules could let them choose from sample data or upload their own, and then apply well-known optimizations to their data. And one thing we were sure about including was some way of surfacing intelligent recommendations to the user based on their selections. So this would hand off the work of identifying the best practices for a given data set and model to the system. And then the user could then incorporate these recommendations into their code without extensive research on their part. And we decided that automated recommendations, wherever possible, would be a key appeal of our app. It'd be central to how we brand its benefits to our hackathon judges. Our reasoning was that our app might bring together cool capabilities, but if these capabilities weren't provided to users in an intuitive way, we might as well not have them. Because somebody already knowledgeable with machine learning would just be using conventional methods, like coding TensorFlow models in Python notebooks, or harnessing cloud services like AWS. Our target audience was the beginner, so we'd have to maximize ease of use in order to differentiate ourselves from existing platforms for the more technically inclined. As you can see, I took this from one of our notes in late May, back when we were kind of figuring things out. And so this was an example of what a recommendation might look like. And like I mentioned, we hadn't yet figured out how this would fit in, where this would come from, and how this would fit in with the natural language side. But we did have some idea of kind of what kind of pointers might we want to give them. So now we had Facebook's goal of driving user productivity and fostering learning partially addressed. But the other half of the equation, natural language interactions, was still a mystery. We knew some type of voice and text interactivity would lend itself to the recommendation system mentioned before, and check off the remaining boxes for the hackathon, but we hadn't yet devised a seamless way to fit it all together. At this point, we had our overall vision figured out, as well as some vague ideas about what we wanted to do, but we needed something more concrete to develop. So we spent the next couple of days turning these ideas into a piece-by-piece breakdown of the web app. The really tricky part was figuring out what the user's gateway into the app should be. First of all, there's a few different types of machine learning processes. There's regression, where you try and predict a numerical variable, and classification, where you label something as belonging to a certain category, and a few others within natural language processing. And then within these high-level groupings, there's specific model types that might work best for a certain problem or data set. And then even the data set could be the user's own or a sample one that we provide. And asking the user to name their machine learning process or model would defeat the entire point of a beginner-oriented platform. So given all the complexity, all of the intricacies in this machine learning process, all the components, we had to work really hard to figure out the best starting point. And for us, this meant going back to what we said earlier about what the user does know, which is what their objective is. What are they looking to accomplish with the help of machine learning? If we could sit down with them and ask them this one question, we would be able to extract a ton of information right off the bat. First of all, their answer probably reflects a specific machine learning task, even without them knowing. If they say they want to predict home values based on square footage, that indicates regression. And if instead they want to tell if an image is a cat or a dog, that's classification. If they say they want to guess someone's mood based off their tweets, that's a type of NLP task known as sentiment analysis, and so on. And besides just the task, we can also infer some things about their data set. The word tweets indicates they would probably benefit from the popular Twitter dataset available on Kaggle. But if they instead said something generic like analyze text data, they might have their own custom data in mind. And if they do in fact name a common machine learning dataset, we could pre-fill a ton of options and feature steps, recommended models and data preprocessors. And if not, we could ask a question or two more to get some more details with which to make recommendations. And then we figured this would all be possible with one of the main pieces of the hackathon, which is the use of WIT AI. As a natural language understanding or NLU platform, WIT's very function was to identify the intent behind a query and extract relevant info. So this all looked like a viable and incredibly valuable approach that we could extend throughout the process of using our app. We could delineate a few stages of the machine learning process, from task to dataset, model, and preprocessors, and at each stage present multiple options to the user. With the help of the chatbot, we could guide them along or ask them questions to learn more. And WIT AI would power the chatbot under the hood by analyzing the user's responses to look for what recommendations to make. And then meanwhile, the user's selections at each stage are building code block by block for their program, making our app an end-to-end workflow for machine learning. So based on this defined, more integrated understanding of how our app would look, we hammered out the finer details about each stage, what models and preprocessors we would offer, what questions would our chatbot ask the user, and what information did we hope to collect from their responses. And by the end, we had an outline of the different forking paths a user could take based on their selections or interaction, and where these paths would converge at the end of the process. So only with this outline complete did we feel comfortable now actually building the web app. As you've noticed, we spent a good chunk of time talking about this ideation step with you, just as we spent several days on it during the hackathon itself, where time was always of the essence. And the reason why is that we think this was one of the most important periods of our hackathon experience, even without writing a single line of code. there's a difficult tension within any project or endeavor between the amount of planning you'd like to do and the amount of time this takes away from realizing that plan. During a competition, this tension becomes even stronger because of the fixed time constraint, which is just completely inflexible. If you're even 1 second late, you're disqualified. So it can be tempting in a hackathon to try and hit the ground running, thinking about things as you're developing them and telling yourself you'll figure out more of the details or changes later. But this part of planning that Sanuj and I did together was one of the best investments of time because of how many future problems it saved us from.
All right. Next, we'll dive into our tech stack, what we used to build Otto, and how we decided between the different tools. So first of all, we've both had some experience working on web apps. So the basics of our tech stack were easily decided, React and Node.js. Going with familiar, well-documented, and highly used frameworks is a great choice for most projects, since you'll be able to find information and extensions very easily, unless of course you have specific needs to use something different. These are like great choices for a basic web app. So one big question that affected our tech stack. Oh, yeah, sorry, I think I cut off for a second. One big question that affected our tech stack was whether we wanted to support complex ML algorithms. Too high of a CPU load could necessitate setting up a server to run our models. The benefits of doing so were many. The benefits of having a server-based application. We could use an online repository of data sets, allowing for bigger data sets to be used and more user flexibility in this regard. We could have Python code. The Python code output that we give to the users would actually be executed on the server, providing a stronger correctness guarantee out of the box. And the complexity of machine learning models also becomes less of an issue with a dedicated machine running models. Um, However, we had to weigh the benefits with the costs of implementing the solution, which were we would have to set up a communication API, send user inputs and parameters to the server, run the model with preloaded data sets, and then poll for the response. The UI would also lose a bit of snap waiting for this process to finish. And the sort of effort needed to set this up and the reliability we could have expect with it, those would add like recurring costs and maintenance effort needed, even beyond the hackathon project. So essentially, our aim was to keep it simple and lightweight, focusing on simple but effective tools to help beginners learn and prototype models, as opposed to churning out an advanced, fully functional, robust machine learning system. So with that in mind, we decided to do as much as we could in the browser itself, committing to running our models in JavaScript. This we decided and never looked back. It limited our ability to support some features like online training of the neural network, which would require large data sets and extensive processing time. But we deemed this as a nice to have and not a must have. So restricting ourselves to JavaScript meant we could laser focus on our React application. All libraries we used had to be React specific, like Material UI, Chat Widget, the syntax highlighter we used, and others. This sort of thinking that we need everything to be React compatible minimized issues while in development, and it limited the amount of hacks we had to use to bring it all together. So some of the libraries we decided to use are Material UI. I really liked the theme of it, and it had all the components we wanted to use, like the vertical stepper for building the pipeline, which we actually later dropped out of using. We'll show you later. Some simple tables for displaying data sets, and discrete and continuous sliders for stuff like model tuning. Then we have React Chat Widget. It's very simple out of the box with enough CSS flexibility to be customized to our needs. Um, Also React Sigma, which is a graphing library we already used in NetWeaver, and it saved us a lot of time with fiddling with neurons. Um, and then Recharts, which is a well-known and supported charting library that we use for our visualizations. It comes with nice-looking color presets and transition animations that we were pleasantly surprised by. So, in general, our process for testing our libraries was to try and render an example from their website within our app. If it didn't disrupt other elements, some weird rendering issues weren't being seen, and also we were able to conditionally render it with different properties and different like arguments set on the library. We would mark it as a success and keep going. Um, Something to keep in mind: it doesn't matter too much what you pick. Just make sure you're comfortable working with it. For a hackathon, actually, it's better to spend time developing than debating which library is best. So try to pick libraries you have experience with and that let you achieve the end goal and stick with them. Lastly, for ML training and visualization, we wrote our own JS code for training k-nearest neighbors. We use a library called regression to run linear regression. For NLP, we queried the with.js client. And for neural networks, we only did model building with React Sigma, skipping any training, opting to only provide the training code and not run it in the browser. Um, this brings us to UI mocking. For mocking the UI, we use Figma, which is a online web designing app. It's often used at Facebook by our designers. This is a part of the project we should have spent a lot more time on upfront. Defining what the application looks like um, was a really important step, which clarifies the end goal. Um, while we decided on the main elements and their functionality, putting them on the screen to form a coherent UI was kind of skipped when we were planning, and it was left as a ad hoc task I would do whenever I worked on a particular element. So the next slide shows what our initial design looked like based on just ad hoc, just trying to decide where each thing would go. And of course, as you can see, our chatbot is overlapping with the toolbox. It kind of looks clunky, um, very rough around the edges. And then we did a complete overhaul of the UI and ended up with the current state, which is what you see here. You're muted, man.
Sorry about that. Last part of our tech stack was Wit AI. And as mentioned before, Wit AI is part of a broader category of services called NLU, or Natural Language Understanding. And just a general overview of what they do, NLU platforms take queries and from that classify an intent. You would train them on specific intents. So if you're making, like an Alexa app to integrate with Spotify, you would train it for like play intents, shuffle intents, skip song intents. And for our app, we trained it to classify queries as regression, classification, as well as using different services later in our chatbot. And then as you can see, you can also pull out other details from that statement besides just the intent. So these are called entities. And we would use those kinds of details to power other aspects of our system. So as mentioned before, if we detected keywords that match against our database of sample data sets, then we would know to offer them that data set, as well as optimize their preprocessors and the models recommended, things like that. So yeah. So we had a concrete vision of our app in mind, and as the previous things mentioned, composed the tech stack we would use to build it all. So we worked over the next 3.5 weeks to build our vision from the ground up. So at this point, Sanuj and I had already spent a few days texting ideas and images back and forth. and it was getting really messy. So we decided a Slack workspace would be a perfect way to host our conversations in a way that we could return to them easily, pin useful links or resources, and organize discussions into separate channels for different topics. And the second thing we did was create a GitHub project board, or more generically, a Kanban board, where we could track the progress of all our features. And this integrated seamlessly with our project repository in GitHub. And it was a great way to keep organized throughout the product lifecycle. Although admittedly, I wish Sanuj used it as much as I did, but that's all right. We made it work in the end. In terms of the work itself, at a high level, Sanuj mainly did the front end while I worked on the business logic and WIT backends, but it's actually slightly more complicated than this. So just going, approximately what we did week by week, my work progressed from training WIT models and then making our conversational AI. So if the user says something, what can we pull from that? What can we pre-select for them? And then how do we make the experience flow? So what do we say next? And I coded this independently of state management because Sanuj hadn't done that part yet. So we would have to hook in pieces later. And then later I worked on writing the code generator. I dipped my toes a little bit into UI by making the visualizations for neural nets. And for this, I got to reference NetWeaver quite a bit. So Otto is anyway, in some ways, it's like spiritual successor, but really just like a different beast altogether. And then meanwhile, Sanuj, he built the UI over time, helping me as needed with the code, but he worked a lot on the model visualization plots, the stepper UI, which became key to like guiding the user from stage to stage, and then displaying data as needed. So like sample data or the results of an NLP model. So as you can see, like you can break down our work into 4 big chunks. And then lastly, a 5th big chunk, which is what we did in the last 2 days before the submission deadline. So these last 2 days really get their own spot on the calendar because we scrambled without sleep to do multiple weeks worth of output and really in some ways multiple weeks worth of catch up. So on my end, I fixed critical issues that we completely put off, things regarding usability, how Otto fit in, several parts of the chatbot experience, and just like usability fixes that we'd have to do for our app to be enjoyable by the user. And then in the last 2 days, like Sanuj mentioned before, our UI was not good for a long time because it was totally ad hoc. The good planning and design principles we applied to the system design, we dropped the ball on that when it came to the UI. And we realized that like we do not want to submit it like this. We have all these features, but it's not done in a presentable way. So we went back to the drawing board, really put our head into it. We used Figma and came up with a design we were proud of. And then in those 2 days, Sanuj worked really hard and really fast to get our vision down into the code. Yeah. So that's how our work process ended up unfolding over the month. And next steps for Otto. So what happened once we finished? So in that last day, we finalized our submission. So the project was due at the end of some day at the end of June at noon. So from 4 a.m. up until like the last moment, we were finalizing our README on GitHub, which we also doubled as our submission page on DevPost for the hackathon. And we really put a lot of effort into this to showcase our features to the judges, especially talk about WIT and how we were using Facebook's service. And we really wanted not just our website to be presentable, but our pitch to the judges to be well formatted, beautiful, and enjoyable to look at. So a lot of the GIFs we showed you before come from that submission page we turned into the judges. So we used GIFs to stand out. And then the other important thing we did was make a quick start section. So Otto has, as you can tell, it has a lot of features swirling around, a lot of different things going on, different ways to use it. So we wanted to give quick access points into different routes or paths the user could take within the website. So we gave example queries or different ways to use Otto that made good use of our sample datasets feature, as well as the different models and different features that we offered within Otto. So here, the sample datasets, we really harnessed and tapped into that, because that would be the best way to show judges how quick it is to prototype models within Otto. And we heard from judges and other users trying the app that they use these quick start features. Actually, we checked later through our logs within WIT, and we found that these quick start queries were among the most common sent to our servers. So people were really using this section, the examples provided here, to get a feel for what Otto can do. And looking back, we think this was a must-have to get a leg up in the competition. And because if we're claiming to, like simplify the machine learning process with an app, at the very least, we should also simplify our presentation of that before we get into the weeds. So this is a great thing to put at the top of our submission page. And so we found out in a few weeks, it was a long wait, but we found out that we notched a 3rd place win in the competition. And for context, there was over 3,000 participants. So we were thrilled to have won and grateful for the chance to take part in the hackathon. And afterwards, we decided to promote our app, to coast off that hackathon victory in a sense. And we did this for multiple reasons. We wanted to get eyes on Otto for feedback, but also build new connections and in general, get our name out there as developers. And we did this in a few key ways. So we leaned heavily on social media. So Twitter, which lends itself to quick snippets, those GIFs we showed you before. Reddit, which has a lot of communities with people interested in this stuff. And a big one was LinkedIn. With LinkedIn, we posted a quick promotional video and really worked on networking with people. So that meant finding people passionate about data science, natural language processing, machine learning with big audiences and reaching out to them. And on LinkedIn, there's a lot of, connection requests that never get a response. I guess like the LinkedIn version of being left on red. But there are a lot of people who are interested about their fields and have big voices and have lots of people following them. And so they're really excited to share content that interests them and share content that'll also, pick up a few more followers for them. So we found quite a few people who were happy to promote audio and like Otto and then reshare our video. So just showing you, I posted on LinkedIn and got a good amount of views and likes. And then also DevPost reached out to us for some advice on giving tips to winners. And if I'm correct, this is indirectly how we're here at this conference, because Cassie from DevPost then gave our name to Marco at JSLA after we worked with Cassie to get this out there. So yeah, just an interesting fact. And then at this point, especially with Otto being reshared on LinkedIn and other platforms, the number of stars and interest on GitHub suddenly surged at this point. So at one point, Otto trended worldwide on GitHub. So it was like the 4th most popular JavaScript project and 15th among all projects on GitHub. Also, a big source of traffic was Y Combinator's Hacker News, and we broke the top 10 on YCom. And that was a big source of traffic to our GitHub page and a big way to get a ton of stars. And by the end, we ended with almost 900, which is nice. It's a good resume boost. So this is the video we produced after the competition to share on social media. So I'll show you guys that.
Oh, there's no audio actually.
Oh, it's not working?
The audio isn't.
Okay. I can send a link. I thought audio usually works. I can send a link afterwards. I put a nice like instrumental track to it that it really elevates the video experience. But yeah, as you can see, we really we kind of leaned again into those like animations that we showed you earlier to try to get eyeballs and get people interested in the tool. So this was a good way to get reshares and get people interested in the web app. Okay. So lastly, we wanted to we talked a lot about different pieces of advice to you throughout this presentation, but we wanted to highlight some takeaways that we hadn't talked about too much before. So before that, we also wanted to acknowledge a few limitations of Otto, because there were some things that within the month we didn't get to accomplish to the extent that we wanted. So we wanted to really enhance the educational aspect a little bit. So Otto right now, it guides you through the steps and it takes in the answers that you give to the questions it asks you. So if it asks you like, oh, what does your data look like? It'll use your answer to try to pick, the preprocessor in the model. But we also wanted it to work in the reverse direction. So you can ask it questions about ML. You can ask it, like, oh, what does this model do? What does this term mean? And it could provide that kind of info to you. And so we think that also represents like a good next step for us. Another addition we'd like to make. And another limitation was because we worked on it to like get it done and really prioritize the features within the app, we weren't able to make it like well supported on smaller screens. And we really took the hack and hackathon literally in this sense. We, did some clever things to get it to work. Like one of them is if your resolution is a certain size, it'll trigger like the browser zoom function within CSS to try and get the pieces to fit. So yeah, for the purpose of the hackathon, we had to just try and get the UI working as best as it could for most resolutions. But yeah, like if you open it on your phone, it doesn't look how we want it to. So we'd also like mobile and smaller screen support. And then lastly, code output. We did a lot of testing, but in some cases, it could still require tweaks depending on your data set. So if your data set is structured differently, like you might have like another array wrapping it or something like that, it could require a few tweaks from the user. So we'd like to address this by having you upload your data set to Otto, and it'll just use that, some analysis on that to enhance some of the code that it's generating for you. Okay. So some big insights and lessons learned from our experience. So a big one was how essential UI design is. And this really is obvious in retrospect, but like earlier, we showed you that planning doc for our system. The extent to which we designed our system in terms of features and components, we didn't do that for UI until the very end. So like 3 days before we realized this, and Sanuj and I did design together, we sat down, had a call, and over Figma, we came up with a better design and then overhauled it in the last few days. But that really should have been done from the get-go. And then another big thing was prioritizing intelligently. So you need to weigh the time and effort something will take against the value of the feature. So for example, like one area where I didn't do this was I spent too much time training WIT models when they turned out to be relatively unimportant to what we had to submit. you can get 90% accuracy for a model in terms of like inferring a user's task, and pushing it above that level takes a lot more time than it's actually worth. But one area where we did a great job of this is prioritizing getting things like code generation done or visualizations done, because we knew that this would stand out in the competition. So we both, there were areas where we could have done better at this and areas where we did real well. And then lastly, we think we excelled in terms of planning and development with regards to the system itself. So we had good ownership of the different pieces, so not too much interdependencies. And one thing that was really important was a joint understanding of why we were doing things. So we would discuss and debate with each other, like, we need this because this will stand out to the judges. Like sample data was really important. Visualizations was really important. So when we both kind of had this mutual understanding and agreement on the importance of things, that really motivated other ideas or motivated the small changes to get it to be just right. So we think these are kind of the three, like takeaways we want to highlight for you. Yeah, that's our talk on our experience building a hackathon winner, and we hope this was helpful for you guys. We tried to highlight, the more interesting or useful aspects of this experience for you. Yeah, thanks for watching.
Awesome. I'm just like mind blown by like everything that I've seen so far. So thank you, Kartik and Sanuj. Like I said to you way back, I really did want you to kind of like go through the whole thing and explain. And I felt like you really did, like you knocked it out of the park with this presentation. So thank you for that. Yeah, you did a really good job of explaining everything. And even though I'm not as familiar with ML as you are probably, I still felt like, this made a lot of sense, like the way you guys were thinking about, building out this particular, project. So I wanted to just ask, I guess, like in the beginning, because there's so many, components to this particular project, did you feel like, in the span of the time that you needed to build this all together, anything was really difficult to learn or pick up, or did you already sort of know all of these things going in? Like, did you know, like, about with AI and, the API with that? Did you know ML? Was that something that you had been doing before, at your university? Then obviously also some of the other stuff like to Sanuj, like React, maybe using Material UI, or is this just stuff that you kind of like, you also had to learn as part of the process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think like we described kind of in the motivation and like planning stages, a lot of this came from things that we were familiar with. But personally for me, like I had a machine learning experience with a research professor back when I wasn't experienced with ML, like I hadn't taken a class on it. And like we were just trying to get a neural network to do something for some scientific research. And it could be a bit frustrating because it was like we have to learn this whole other tool and this whole other ecosystem for like the scientific application that we actually want. And I think Sanuj had a few similar experiences because he had previously been tasked with like designing ML systems for companies he'd worked for. So I think we were kind of motivated by our own experiences, but we kind of stuck to what we did know within it. So ML, it is more wide ranging than some of the models we picked. There's really like cutting edge, intricate stuff, different theories being posited in research papers, but we tried to stick to what we did know. So that way, whatever we're guiding beginners through, like if you teach something, you should also know it in a sense. So we stuck to like ML basics, and we think that was a solid choice. But I can let Sanuj speak if he found like any UI stuff requiring like special learning.
Yeah, one thing I'll mention here is that my default go-to when I want to work on something React based is like, take React and put like a state management system in it. Um, and we 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 started this project with just the idea of keeping it simple and trying to build more features and build like a nice user experience instead of focusing on the boilerplate code that often comes with using new libraries. You have to like um, do things their way. So one thing that I challenged myself with and actually learned in this process is how to not use a state-based state management system and manage state in React using effects, which is like use state and use reducer, things like that. Um, we also use flow with React, and that really helped us just have the like define our state and just very in a very organized way, but not having to use any state management. So we sort of built our own reducers and built our own state variables and everything, and that was actually fun for me. And I remember teaching Karthik like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. This is the reducer, and this is where everything goes. And I think him not having to learn like Flux or anything like that, Redux and stuff, um, that actually sped up our development process by a bit.
I would like to ask you, Sanuj, because you brought it up. So I know you're working at Facebook now, right? Like that's something you're doing now. Was that something that you decided, like I guess for this particular project, you wanted to just build your own reducer, build your own like state management tool, just because you felt like it was a good challenge for you? Was that, are you like, really interested in, I guess, the React project, and is that something that you are contributing to now?
Uh, oh, that's a good question. That would be really awesome if I was doing that. I'd be really proud. But I do follow that React team a lot. I don't contribute to that project though. Um, Honestly, I would like to find out like what qualifications do you need to actually apply to that team. It's awesome that you bring it up. I never even thought about it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was just curious because, like React, if I remember, was kind of like at the beginning, it was kind of like just a demo, and people were, trying to make like reactive components, and they were doing that in vanilla JavaScript libraries. And I think like eventually it kind of evolved into, this popular framework that it is now, which is largely maintained by Facebook. But,
Right.
I was just thinking like you made those choices. You were thinking like maybe rather than use like, um, stuff that's already boilerplate, you just wanted to build it yourself. So I thought maybe that might have been a motivation for you. But all
Mhm.
good.
Yeah, I generally find React to be a very awesome. It's like so enjoyable to work with it. It's so like so user friendly. You can actually visualize everything that's happening in your head,
Mhm.
um, and that sort of led me to want to do things sort of myself. Because like it's a hobby project, right? I don't have to. Um, there's no like restrictions on what I can do. So yeah, that was a fun part.
Um, I got a question for you, Karthik, and then I'm also gonna, just make sure I ask the questions from the audience listening too, because I know they've been asking.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, going back to ML and Alexa, were they already using some of these libraries there, and you thought like it'd be kind of just great to, build upon that experience and bring that into Otto? Was that kind of like, was it a crash course for you the year before coming into this?
Not exact. So it was it's so a lot of this, so this kind of happened concurrently. So my internship with the Alexa team, it ran from May until August. And then Sanuj and I, so like early May until August, and then Sanuj and I, we decided to work on this hackathon this was from late May until late June. And so it wasn't that Alexa was using these libraries, but it's that gaining familiarity with NLU made wit instantly more familiar. So I think that's like earlier we were asking about learning curves, and that's like I kind of pointed to Sanuj because I think he had a lot more to learn than I did. Like I didn't. For me, it was a lot of working curves. Like I had to work a lot to code things, but in terms of like learning new things, wit just felt familiar because that basic idea of like training it to classify intents, pick apart entities, feed us that information, and then act on that. That's at the core of what like Alexa and Google's like voice AI and all this stuff is doing. So I think getting like immersed in that world made the even just a few weeks made like starting with wit instantly like familiar, you know.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. I do want to open it up to the audience. So I guess I'll go off the chat first, and then we'll allow people to just unmute for a sec. So Duck asks, which library for bot did you use? And I guess for bot, maybe are you referring to the UI, the front end part where you see like the pop-up? React chat widget, I see it below actually. Okay, so it looks like Sanuj asked, answer this question. Does anybody else have any questions? I want to just let people have a chance to unmute.
I was wondering how many hours total you think you guys put into this?
That's a tough one.
How much caffeine did you drink to get it done?
I don't drink coffee.
I mean,
Sanuj, what about you?
Ballpark it. Obviously, it was quite to get everything put together, but like,
I think
100, 200, 1,000. Well, not 1,000, but obviously.
So for the last 2 days, I think we worked like maybe 40 hours.
Yeah, 40 hours from that, and then maybe over the other weeks, because I remember I would do I would do about 4 hours every day almost, and that was for like 3 weeks.
Yeah,
so,
same with me.
Yeah, so about like 80-ish hours, 80 to 100, I don't know.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and while I had like my internship going and Sanuj was working, so it felt like 2 jobs almost.
That's awesome.
How about the all-nighters? You said you had 2 all-nighters. That's pretty strong. No coffee. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so what is your drink of choice?
I'm big on teas.
Tea.
Yeah, I like ginger tea and green tea.
I'll take some Nesquik any day.
Nesquik.
Dang, I didn't know that.
But I think like the all-nighters we pulled off, it seemed more like, like a must-do instead of actually making the choice to not sleep. We were like, dude, there's no way we're sleeping right now, because we actually at the end we fully believed that this was a potential winning entry, and we just wanted to get those last bits out there just to like make sure we are satisfied with our work. And yeah, it worked out. That was great.
Anyone else? Other questions?
What are you doing with it now?
That's a good one. So we did hear from some people interested in contributing. We have it on our to-do list to kind of make it more extensible. So we need to like refactor things and document and make like a contributor's guide. But yeah, so we have a lot of things planned, like adding more models, making it like more educational throughout the process. But yeah, for now, it's sort of on hold, but it is something that we hope to return to in the future, near future.
I see in the chat someone mentioned image detection, and that is an awesome idea to like include in this. It's like a whole other world of computer vision that we can leverage as just like another task you want to do. So it fits well within our model.
Do you think you'd stick with WIT or maybe migrate to a different NLP?
There's other ones. WIT has a nice simplicity, but one thing that they used to have it, but then I guess they removed it when they wanted to like pare down some of their features. They used to have context-based intent classification. So like your WIT backend itself would also have like a state manager. So if it's at this state, it'll choose between these two intents, and if it's at that state, it'll choose between the. So if they still had that, we would have only had to make one WIT backend and use those contexts to keep track, to separate like our model and task inference and like preprocessor inference. But because they didn't, we had to make like 4 different WIT backends to do different things and have Otto like call separate ones. So I think if we were to replace, we would look for one that would let us do it in like one model for multiple purposes.
Have you looked at any like Lex or a bunch out there? Microsoft's got theirs, Cortana
yeah,
stuff.
I've looked at Microsoft's a little bit. I looked into a little bit of this when I was interning at Alexa, because I was also interested in like what the other NLU platforms are. So yeah, Microsoft's, it looked cool.
I've also worked with Spacey. It's like a industrial strength NLP processor, and that's a good question. Like, would we actually want to change if it were worth the effort? I guess. For now, we haven't found like real limitations in the NLP interaction, but it would be worth looking into if we felt we would expand our NLP interaction to like more educational use cases and, like Kartik said, context based, so we can keep track of the previous information we have had.
What about moving more to a server model instead of staying on the browser? I mean, the browser might be great for educational purposes, but if you want to do real work or hook into real backend systems, you might want to move to the server side so people could maybe authenticate their backend processes and connect that into your backend so that you can go and manipulate theirs through your natural language interface.
That's a good one. Maybe we should hire you as a product manager.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the challenges with hackathons. You know, you ideate around the challenge that's out there and the tools that they give you to work with. And that's the be all and end all of the project. And then after that, you go, okay, well, now what? And it doesn't necessarily have a direct path to a new life. I mean, sometimes they do, but most of the time you have to step back a bit and go, okay, well, if we really want to bring this to the market, would we have used those tools? Would we have done it this way? Who would our real customers be and how would they want to use this? And I'm sure the decision process would be quite different.
Yeah.
I was going to ask as a follow-up to that, you know, like when, maybe you didn't have too much insight into this, but I was going to ask, you know, with the other submissions, were you all able to see what those submissions were and, you know, what other people were doing with, you know, this AI technology from Facebook with
DevPost? I know I can answer that one. DevPost doesn't show you anybody's stuff until the end.
Yeah, but even at the end though, like, I mean, was there like information about what happened?
Yeah, so we saw a few of them. Like we looked at the other 2 winners. Some people, like one of the other winners did a business analytics platform. So it was, I think it was like you would give it details about your business. I forget exactly, but it would pull up like relevant trends, hashtags to use for marketing, something along those lines. I know a lot of people did chatbots to be like like chatbot friends or to like help you deal with like tough situations. But I think because a lot of those exist out there, that was deemed like already a saturated space. But yeah, I think some of the other winning or like well received ones focus kind of like on business analytics, things like that. Data, there's a few data science ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the winner actually was the first one you mentioned. It's like a media monitoring and brand reputation trends. It basically takes Yelp reviews and gives you the sentiment of the users reviewing your brand. Um, and it's got like a nice UI, and you can put pipelines into it and it like notifies you when the pipeline is done, and you can download and export data and everything. So it's like pretty fancy actually for like a month-long project.
That's really cool. Maybe just something to, continue to look into as you develop. I know yours is kind of like completely different, but like it's always good to just look at what everybody else is doing. I mean, even I look at, the concept to execution, I always feel like there's a lot of great ideas in the way you, plan things out, build things out that, I can use for stuff that I'm doing, or even like Team Hack and some of the projects that we're working on. So I mean, it's always great to just kind of like see, what others are doing. There was one other question I had in my mind, and I think it goes along hand with this, but are you thinking about doing any other projects besides this? Are you like currently involved in new hackathons? Are you looking at them, or are you just kind of like keeping tabs? What's the deal?
Yeah, so I worked, so I took part in an ideathon with a few friends where it's like you I don't know, I guess I like the idea of like pitching or focusing on how to like sell things. So like in the ideathon, you don't actually develop the product, but you like pitch an idea for like seed money to go do it. So a few friends and I did that for like a mental health network app where with as you can tell, I kind of like this idea of like doing things with a few clicks. So for me, it was like with just a few taps, you should be able to kind of send a message to people within a support network that you kind of need help or like support with regards to your mental health. So that's a few friends and I were like in the planning stage of actually working on that mobile app. And then this weekend, I'll be taking part in another hackathon with a different group of friends, and we'll see what we make.
That's awesome. Which hackathon, by the way?
I don't know. My friend just sent me a link. He was like, I want to do this hackathon with me. I was like, yeah, sure. So I don't actually remember.
All good. All good.
Yeah.
Does the audience have any more questions? I think I see one here in the chat from Martin. It says, have you, or maybe we asked, somebody answered this already too, I think. It was the image detection. So.
If I may, I just want to share. I mean, the reason why I came to this one was interested is something I'm working on. It's a workflow, and I'm interested in applying this in conjunction with the workflow, because right now, the environment I work in, there's a lot of process, and it's manual process. And I wanted to have in such a way that the workflow goes along, but the people that doing the work, they're very reluctant to changes, as you can imagine. So with this in mind, I think it'll make it easier for them to ease in, because there's always somebody, sort of like somebody going along guiding them. Let's say, for example, they're working on some task and they come in and say, what do I do? The idea is to anticipate what task they're doing, or maybe they can type out, I want to write a proposal for mental health, for example. So with that, this system kind of on the side said, here's some links, some ideas, and maybe pre-generate a using GP3, some idea to get started. And then they can pick up on that, and as they write along, we'll pick out the context to help them put the proposal together. So that's how I was thinking, how I would piece this together with what I'm working on, is a workflow, and then this kind of like sitting on the side, guiding them toward what they want to do, to the end goal.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, what do you both think, Kartik, Sanuj? Do you think that this is something that, I guess like your workflows that you went over today, do you feel like, there things that can be applied to pretty much all ways of like planning for new projects? Are the key takeaways that you got from, how you built out the last project, and are you implementing them in future workflows?
Sanuj, I think you were saying something kind of similar to this the other day, right?
So I think one, well, the key takeaways that we talked about, they can fit in here, in the sense that you really got to think like, what is the purpose of your web app? And like, I don't have a bunch of experience, but this is what I learned from the hackathon, that in the last 2 days when we were like working on it, we were like, okay, let's just experience what our app is looking like to a random user that comes to the app. And it felt like too much stuff is going on. Just, I don't know where I should click first. Am I doing 5 different things at the same time? This chatbot is saying things to me. Where should my attention go? And when we realized that, we figured out that like, this is not gonna work. Even though we have like XYZ features, we need to like motivate the user to actually want to explore them, and not just sit and be bored of the website and just not use it again. So this sort of like, the user experience part is often missing in a lot of like um, programmers knowledge. And I work with like designers all the time, and they do their work and I do mine, and we collaborate at some point. But I really respect like how they can just take a blank canvas and fill it with like very understandable, coherent design that I look at and I say like, yeah man, that looks right. And that feels like, I want to interact with it, and it feels smooth. And we often like underestimate that sort of thing, because we feel like, oh, it's not, that guy's not coding anything, or it's not very smart work, but it really is, and it makes a huge difference. And like, we have real life examples of those things, like the Uber app. It's like so smooth, and it just feels right when you work on it. And something else, like if you open Lyft one day, just feels a little tacky. I don't know. So that's one thing that I and Karthik will definitely keep in mind going forward. Like, you really got to hone in on that aspect. And so the chatbot and everything, we had to like make it work with it. And I'm really glad that Duck, you found that the chatbot guiding you through the process, and the whole simplified process that tells the user where they're at and what they've done, that really inspired you to use it in your own project. Um, that's the best case outcome. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, excellent. I was going to also add just real quick, Sanuj, did you paint your own room wall?
I did. Yeah.
You did? And you came up with that setup, the guitars and the frames in the background? It's pretty nice.
Yeah. I converted my closet to my home office. Like, fully removed the door and everything, and it's nice to have this separation between my room where I sleep and I eat, and here where I work and play music. So it's like a nice um, space now. Yeah.
That's
I'm
cool.
jealous. He's always sending me pictures of his like dream home, as he calls it.
Like that probably lends itself into your workflow and like UI UX stuff. So pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see here. It is 7:30. I do want to respect everybody's time. So I guess, we'll give a few more minutes and then we'll wrap it up for tonight. Does anybody else have anything to add? Any questions? Last minute stuff? I see some hand clapping, so that's
Thanks,
good.
guys. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
I think,
congrats on the hackathon.
Thank you.
yeah, congratulations. Very, very good. Again, like this is an excellent overview of like everything you did. You know, congrats to both of you, and obviously the best of luck to everything you're doing for what you're doing in the future, especially at your new jobs and all that. I was just going to like ask one more time, do you have a link to the project itself from GitHub, or is
Yeah.
it closed source now?
No, I can send it.
Okay, because we'd like to host that on our website as well as talk about it within the YouTube video and all that.
Gotcha.
Cool. I got it right here. Okay. So perfect.
Oh, cool.
At this point, if everybody wants to just kind of like, trade LinkedIn's, feel free to do that. And you can do that within the chat. It's always great to network and talk to people, after the meetup. I also do want to mention that we are on Slack and Discord as well. And both of those links are available on the javascriptla.net website. It's just javascriptla.net. And then if you scroll around in there, you'll find links to our Discord and Slack, and you can chat with us offline, as well as join Team Hack and all the initiatives we talked about. And then, of course, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you like, and as well as the speakers. And we'd love to keep you all educated and learning about like the coolest stuff that's going on. Obviously, Kartik, Sanuj, if you want to add to that, let us know about new things that you see, not just the stuff you're doing, but anything like you might notice that might be trending or pretty cool. Feel free to let us know about what those things are, because we really want to be able to share some of the knowledge and just kind of get everybody like helping everybody. Maybe we can help you somehow, you can help us somehow. It's a good trade-off. So yeah, and like if you have any information, that goes for everybody, on cool topics, cool ideas, cool libraries, things you want to explore, just let us know, and we'd love to talk about it at the next meetups.
Sounds good. Yeah, it's great to be part of this like online community. Glad that you guys have made it work, and probably even like thrive since Corona has hit, and like hosting these events and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually really thankful that people remember us in post-Corona life, but and I'm glad that the world is coming together, and I want people to stay safe and stay healthy. Obviously, with the issues with coronavirus still going on, but at the same time, I do want people to be able to like benefit from knowledge. So our mission is to continue to like make this group as exciting and excellent as possible, really keep people engaged with like projects, and just help people be better software engineers. So yeah, anything you can do to help support that would be great.
Awesome.
All right, well, thank you all again. Thank you, Kartik. Thank you, Sanuj. Thank you all the people who came tonight, and we'll see you all at the next meetup. And as always, be sure to tune into our YouTube, youtube.com/hackbuddyorg, to see the video if you wanted to go back in time and see what we talked about. All right. Thank you.
Cool.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for having us.